Good morning, Brother Will.
Good morning, Brother Rich. How you doing?
Once again, as always, sir, I am better than I deserve.
I'm always glad to hear it, brother. Always glad to hear it.
I've had something going on with my camera as of late, so if it goes white screen, you'll still hear me. I'll throw up an avatar and we'll keep moving, but
Okay.
I wouldn't want to deprive anybody of looking at.
Man, highlight of my week on a Monday. Let me tell you. And I just realized the lighting in here has gotten terrible on me, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Still remodeling down here. So
How much longer you got?
4.5 years. I don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's no. Well, my goal is to have it done by the end of March, and
Okay.
So I think we'll make that fairly easily. So.
We got folks jumping on us already. Our good friend, Mr. Alan Kelly, up there in Virginia.
Good morning, Alan.
I am typing out a thing real quick.
All right.
We are live on the YouTubes. We are live
right.
on the Facebooks. So wherever you're joining us from this morning, please like, comment, and hit that share button. Let me know where you are. Johnny King is on. Says, good morning, gentlemen from Kentucky. Our good friend Will Parker is on. Thank you to the 7 folks watching already. Liking it, that share button. It's going to be a long show this morning. There's so much going on. Will and I would be remiss if we didn't fill you in on all the chicanery that's going on out there. So,
yep, it's going to be. It is going to be a very long show. We'll start off with the normal news, economic stuff, and then you're going to touch on some other stuff. Stand by for that. And then you want to do the GDP stuff after that, or you want to finish up with your stuff? How you want to do it, brother?
I actually think that I have the GDP up front.
Okay.
So
yeah, that sets the tone nicely.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Once again, thank you to everybody joining us live. Please, I'm going to give you just a moment of sip your coffee, hit the share button. And I tell you what, let's do this. We'll have a giveaway today. We're going to do a giveaway.
All right, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Anybody that shares the show will be put into a randomized drawing for a copy of On Violence and Varietals.
Ooh.
We
could also just call it How to Be a Man book.
How to Be a Man.
Yeah.
That's right.
So.
All right, sir. Well, let's, without much further ado, tell us about the Fear and Greed Index.
Well, you want to start there? Or you want to start with GDP?
GDP. Well, I think it's going, I think it goes right into it.
Oh, did okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Goes to show how much I know. I just put the slides together. All right. So extreme greed, the market's still running hot here, guys. And we're going to get into the why when we do the news and economics side, because I think there's a good why in there. A lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now, and there hasn't really been a catalyst to drive the market down. Now, if you own Tesla stock, you might disagree with me on that. It's down 30% in the last month or so.
It was overvalued. Even though Elon said that a year ago.
It's overvalued, and Tesla has some unique challenges because you're always looking back to see how a company's doing or an economic number is doing compared to past performance. Well, there for a while they basically monopolized the market, and it's really easy to keep growing at that pace when you basically have a monopoly. And I've always argued that the Tesla as a company, the market cap, the number of shares outstanding times the share value was larger than Toyota at one point, maybe larger than Ford at one point. But if you look at the real value of the company, you look at the assets they have, the customer base, Ford, GM, Stellantis could crush Tesla at their desire. But Tesla also built out an infrastructure that I believe is GM is tapping into with the charging stations. I could be wrong about whether it's GM or not, but one of them is. And now you got the Chinese electric car makers coming on, and you have money's more expensive now. And going out and buying a Tesla at 0% or 1% is a whole lot easier than 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever car loans are running right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, when they come out with when the electric truck goes on the market and it's damn near bulletproof, might be some people want to snag one of those. Just saying.
Yeah, those look pretty cool. Those do look pretty cool. So they've got some unique challenges, but they're also build a good vehicle and a very loyal customer base. So there's definitely value there. But it's due for a bounce. It's down quite a bit in the last month, so I think it's due for a bounce back up. So
yeah.
Anyway,
let's welcome some folks here.
Yeah,
who we got?
Let's see here. Who do we have? John W. Shriver's on from Yukon, Oklahoma, coin number 1919. What's up with the coin number thing?
Oh my gosh, I thought you weren't going to ask the coin number. Let's talk about that real quick. Check out this beauty there, Mr. Will. Woo-hoo-hoo.
There. I've got another one here. My number's bigger, though,
See
which is actually worse, I guess.
it.
Means you've been around longer.
He's been around longer. You're an old G.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, becoming a member of our coined community gets you access to the training vault. Everything from white belt to blue belt, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, unarmed, less lethal, rifle, handgun, shotgun, vehicle tactics. I could go on and on. Edged weapons, you name it. Anything that's going to keep you and your family safer in these trying times, we got you covered in the training vault. So please take a 14-day free test drive of the training vault and see if this is something you want to be a part of. If it is, then hang around for a while. Learn everything you need to learn and then bounce out. I mean, I have no problem with that. But that's what it's all about, guys. Links in today's show notes. Once again, if you share today's show, you're going to be put into a randomized drawing. And some lucky guy or gal out there in Warrior Nation is going to get a copy of my memoir on violence and varietals. Ted Leonard's on in Mississippi. Will Rhodes is on from Missouri, coin number 2269. Don Bothwell out there. I always love Don's comments there. Always spot on.
Yes.
He's out in Northwest Montana. 2270 is his coin number. Alan Kelly, what is he saying?
Noticed all through the news this weekend, a lot of different companies laying off employees, also a lot of pushback on EVs and the administration policies pushing EVs. Yeah, a lot of layoffs. I saw Macy's, Levi's, Business Insider, LA Times. LA Times is in the middle of a revolt. They laid off, I don't know, 20% of the staff there, and other mainstream news outlets are having employees walk out to protest.
But Will,
layoffs.
What's going to happen without the LA Times telling us how white people's cars are polluting the air that brown people breathe? I mean, that was almost.
Well, I think you've received the message, so their work is done with you.
Yeah. Look at some of the headlines that the LA Times has put out in the last couple of years, and I will shed no tears for the.
That. Oh, I agree that they've all made their own bed now. They can spend some time in it. So.
John Schraber is on. Mark Ruddle is on. What's Will Parker say?
He says he finds it ironic that socialists hate Elon Musk but think we should all drive electric rigs when the power grid would fail. Makes you wonder if it's a planned failure. I'll tell you what, the economy there is astounding. Oh, you just went white screen.
I told you that might happen.
So
you can still hear me though, right?
Yep, sure can. So the dichotomy there with Elon Musk cracks me up because he took over Twitter and everybody lost their mind because he was allowing people to actually say what they wanted to say. And but when he goes on with the narrative, then they love him again. It's our society nowadays, I guess.
Until I come back on, guys, I'm gonna see if I can't throw an avatar up here. There's a way to do that. I can figure it out. But anyway, in the moment, my brother Jeff Brown is on. Says, hope you all are well. Gerald Dees is on. And with that, let's get into this GDP stuff.
Okay, so GDP came out last week for the fourth quarter, and there you go. You got your avatar up, and it came in hot. Estimates were 1.5. It came in 3.3. So let's dig into this a little bit. This is going to go relatively quick here, guys. So it came in at 3.3 annualized. Which just means in the case of a quarterly GDP, they just multiply by 4 to get an annual number. So GDP is reported as a real number. Again, economics, real means adjusted for inflation. So out here in the real world, adjusted means they're lying, is what it comes down to, because they can fudge the adjustment to make something real. Now, you can argue back and forth about whether they should just report the headline number before they make it real. That argument could go on like Chevy versus Ford forever. But let's dig into what happened with this number. If you go to the next one there, brother. All right. So sorry for the busy slide here, and there's a lot more red in there than something happened when I sent it over to you there, brother, but that's okay. So if we're going to adjust it for inflation, what measure of inflation should we use? There's CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's a PCE, personal consumption expenditures. That's reported by the BEA, Bureau of Economic Analysis. That is, the PCE is the measure the Federal Reserve prefers to use. But that would be pretty easy and transparent, and we can't have that with a government economic number because we got to be able to fudge these things, right?
That's right.
So the BEA publishes the PCE, but just for the GDP. Is that enough acronyms for you?
Yeah.
But just for the GDP, they use what they call the deflator to account for inflation. And it sounds backwards because you're talking about inflation, but a deflator. Well, inflation reduces the GDP number, hence deflator. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the headline GDP number, you put the deflator in, that deflates the growth to get your real adjusted for inflation number. Okay. And please be reminded here, guys, the BEA is part of the executive branch. There's a hint in there. Okay?
Spoiler alert.
Yep. All right. So let's look at an example. We're going to walk through a couple here so this one, I just made up some numbers here. So let's say you have a headline GDP of 8%, which, by the way, nobody ever talks about. You have to back your way into it. Okay. And with good reason. It would just confuse a lot of folks out there. So you got a headline GDP of 8%, a deflator of 3%. Now, remember that accounts for inflation. That gives you a real GDP of 5% in this made up example. Okay. So this is the number you would hear reported is 5%. You wouldn't hear the other stuff. You got to dig into geek numbers to even find the deflator. It is on the BEA's website. We're going to touch on some of those here later on. If you can go to the next one there, brother.
Absolutely.
All right. Example 1 is the same up there just for reference. Just another example here with made up numbers. If we look at same headline GDP of 8%, but now we make the deflator 1%. So that's less inflation. So now our real GDP is 7%.
Look at that.
Yeah, so you can start to see where they can play some games with this here, right? So if you adjust the deflator, you can change your GDP number. Go to the next one there.
Okay.
Let's talk about what actually came out, fourth quarter of 2023. Now, this is estimated. Remember, guys, they come out with the first numbers and then they revise it, right? So the first one's called the estimate. So we're not going to talk about the headline GDP number yet. We're going to pretend we don't know that. We're going to pretend we don't know the deflator. The real GDP came in at 3.3% annualized. That's the actual number they published. Okay. So now I did a little digging in the BEA website, and we can find out what the deflator is. If you want to go to the next one.
Okay.
All right. So up top is just the previous one where we just looked at the real GDP at 3.3. So we work that backwards. We started at the bottom and work our way up here with a real GDP of 3.3%. They came up with a deflator, an inflation number, if you will, of 1.5% annualized. That doesn't sound like any number I've heard anywhere else lately, like in about 4 years. So you're getting a headline GDP of 4.8%. Ah, you're back. Look at you go.
Look at me. I don't want to deprive America of this.
Oh,
come on, man.
Pitter, patter, pitter, patter, pitter, patter. All right. But wait, the only place the deflator number is used in the GDP report. That's it. It's the only place. Nobody else ever even brings up the term deflator except in this one report that all kinds of people look at, trade the market around, politicians judge the health of our economy off this, and this is the only place they use the deflator. So now I think we can.
And who sets this? The BEA, which is part of the executive branch?
Yes, absolutely. So now let's think about this. I think we can all agree that right now the CPI is being reported at 3.3%. I think we can all agree we're feeling a lot more than 3.3% out there right now. So 1.5% is a bunch of bovine excrement.
True.
Right?
Yep.
All right. So let's plug in some different measures of inflation on this. Let's look at CPI. Okay. And again, guys, I apologize for all the red. Something happened in the transmission here. So you remember when we used their deflator of 1.5, we had a real GDP of 3.3. Okay. Using their deflator of 1.5, we got a headline GDP of 4.8. So that's how I got this headline GDP here of 4.8. So we're keeping a constant there. If we use a deflator, our own one here, using CPI of 3.3, we get a real GDP of 1.5. That doesn't sound as good, does it?
No, it doesn't sound good, particularly for the the executive branch coming into a year that they hope to get reelected.
Now, here's another. I'm sure it's just a coinky dink.
Oh yeah, that's all it is. Come on, Will.
The Wall Street and the economists estimates for fourth quarter GDP, real GDP, was 1.5.
Haha.
Funny how that works. I'm sure it just happens. It just happens. Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing. It's really easy for me to sit here in the middle of Wisconsin and throw stones at the BEA, right?
Yeah.
Pretty easy. So research is your friend. So I went back to the BEA website and did a little digging. Right? Honestly, didn't have to dig very far because they're not trying to hide it too bad. So this is from the BEA's own website. If you really want to fall asleep late at night, go to their website and read. Okay. Good morning, Rudy. Good to see you on, brother. So this is their quarterly percent change from the preceding quarter. So Q4 2023 advanced means their estimate is 1.5%. Now you'll notice in quarter 3 of 2023, they came up with 3.3. Did anybody really feel like inflation went down by 50% plus in that quarter? I didn't feel it.
Nope.
Okay. So now, of course, the way they'll justify this, well, that was just our advanced number. These are just estimates. We have to wait for more numbers to come in.
You're not accusing this administration of cooking the books, are you, Will?
I'm accusing every administration of cooking the books. So no, I'm not accusing just this administration. Okay.
Fair enough.
But let's think about this though. The BEA also publishes the PCE. That's the inflation measurement preferred by the Fed. Why wouldn't they just use that? They already came up with it. The Fed wants to use it. The Fed sets monetary policy. Why wouldn't they use that? Why come up with a whole nother number just for one report? Okay.
I can think of one reason.
What would that be?
Somebody wants to get reelected.
Exactly. So here's the personal consumption and expenditures price index from the BEA website. Now this is monthly. So I did math in public last evening.
Always dangerous for a captain of a commercial airliner to do that.
Always with an Illinois public school education, let me tell you. All right. So you look at October for the month, and this is October 23 compared to October 22. So this is an annual number. They got October 2.9, 2.6, and 2.6. So if you add the three of those up and divide by 3 to get an average, you get 2.7. So where in the heck did 1.5 come from?
It's a what did Matthew McConaughey say in The Wolf of Wall Street? It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fugazi. It doesn't exist. It's fairy dust. It hasn't landed yet.
Exactly. So this is our GDP numbers, guys. So and they'll continue cooking these books as the election comes up. Somebody at the BEA, I'm sure, is feeling pressure to make somebody happy.
I wonder who that is. It ain't you and me, I don't think.
Yeah, probably some big guy.
Yeah, the big guy. No, don't forget to save 10% for the big guy, by the way. But Dr. Fuller is on. It says, hello from downtown Denver, making some executives safe. We'll catch the replay. Great hair, as usual, Will.
I do what I can
on this.
I do what I can despite supply chain issues, brother.
Yeah.
So
Johnny Geek says the numbers are sponsored by Dominion.
Yes. Yeah. It'd be great if politicians were like NASCAR drivers with sponsors.
I know, right? It'd be easy to see who the hell they were, right?
Yeah. Well, you can also look at their unusual whales. You can look at their where they're buying and selling stock at too.
Yeah.
All right. So
hashtag Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, no doubt. 65%. Give me a break. All right. So this was an add-on slide again. Guys, sorry about the color. I won't do that again. It becomes distracting.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Anyway, I didn't do it on the other slide deck, so we'll get away from that. So let's talk about this, because this is, GDP. That is, there's three things that go into a GDP number: gross domestic product. There's consumption, there's investment, and there's government spending. SIG. Okay. Think about smoking a cigarette. Okay. So, what's the deficit done in the last year there, brother?
Say that one more time.
What's the deficit done in the last year? Government spending, what's it done?
Oh, it's gone up and up.
Well, that goes into GDP. And this is why I'm still kind of hanging on a little bit till we may have the non-recession recession, because if they keep pumping money out there, they'll keep the GDP number up. It'll work. The other number, national debt, will continue. We'll long for the days of $34 trillion.
Oh God.
Yeah. It's already unpayable. So at this point, it's kind of like whatever,
It's
All
like,
right.
I mean, hell, there was a Republican that said it first, deficits don't matter.
Yep.
Dick Cheney.
Yep. So fiscal year 23. Now the government fiscal year runs what?
1 October.
1 October through
The
so
30
these
September, yeah.
these don't match up perfect, guys, and
Yep.
it's tough to go dig the numbers out. So bear with me. There's a little fudge factor in here. Okay. So fiscal year 23, the deficit was $1.7 trillion. Now calendar 23, a little bit off, but it's not like they cut their spending way back anywhere in there. The GDP increased by 1.61 trillion. So in other words, if we kept the government spending a balanced budget, if you will, GDP would have gone down.
We can't have that.
Nope. So
Spend more money.
I think in an election year here, it's reasonable to expect those deficit numbers to continue growing, and these are going to use the juicy economic numbers. So you're going to see it put forward as infrastructure projects, the part of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a whole nother.
Are these going to be shovel-ready projects? Just asking for a friend.
Let me see. What's that quote that I heard once? It turned out shovel-ready wasn't as ready as we thought.
Yeah.
But they're going to continue spending like crazy, and it's going to be both sides, in fairness, because it's election year. Everybody wants to get reelected, and an easy way to do that is hand out money.
Yep.
So as long as they can keep interest rates have been moving down. We're going to get into that in the next slides, because that's affecting the stock market, which is affecting your 401k and IRA balances as well. If they drive the interest rates down, if they're able to do that, okay, we're going to see a stock market take off, and boom, it will be insane. We'll see what happens.
All
right. So, hang on, bear with me 1 second here.
Yeah, we had some late additions and bizarre shufflings of the deck this morning, so I apologize for it.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm just going back to my original. Okay, I see where we're at here. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm back with you now. All right. You tumbled my gyros there for a second. So, all right. So we're going to jump from our GDP number to Europe here for a moment. And this is going to dovetail into what Rich is going to talk about here in a bit. So Europe's having some problems right now. They got some unhappy people, and those unhappy people happen to make their food. So big diesel tax stuff, and that they're starting to back off of that. But the farmers have not forgotten where they came from their money at. So also the train drivers here began a 6-day strike. And this was reported a couple of days ago, hitting travel and the economy. And this isn't my underlining here. This is CNN's. A new blow to the sputtering economy in Europe. Yet their stock market's been going up, and we're going to get into that here, okay? It's the second time this month that members of the German GDL union have walked off the job in an ongoing wage dispute with Deutsche Bahn, the state-owned railroad. So you got some unhappy people over there. Turned out the government controlling everything isn't working out so hot.
I can't believe
it. And then the bottom headline there, brother, if you can.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Farmers protest in Europe, bringing France, Germany, and Poland to standstill. Now, that's 3 pretty big countries in the EU. And they're blocking the highways.
Did you see the one where they backed up to a McDonald's, this farmer did, and sprayed manure into the McDonald's restaurant?
Would you notice the difference in the taste of the food?
Oh, come on.
I mean, okay, on the fries you would, because you wouldn't taste the salt, which I love. I love their fries, okay? But
they're pissed off, and I get it.
They're pissed off. And I'll tell you what, those especially those French farmers, they know how to protest. I mean, they're dumping loads of manure into government offices. I saw one a while back, maybe a few months back. They backed the truck through the front doors of the government office and dumped the manure in there. So, I mean, I'll give them kudos. They know how to protest.
They sure as hell do. I want to go to Jeff's comment here, man, because I like it. It says, crystal ball, which country is going to call on the U.S. to pay back? And if I could the whole reason that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in August 2nd, 1990, was because Kuwait had bankrolled his 10-year war, 8-year war, whatever it was, with Iran. And they're like, hey, man, we want to get paid now. And finally, he's like, you know what? I could just take your ass. And I said this a week or so ago, that when countries refuse to pay, often it's through war. And when we win, we go, yep, don't have to pay you now. And it might be the cheaper option, but that's just me being negative Nelly. What do you think to Jeff's comment?
Boy, which country would call us first? I wonder if it would be Russia. Got rid of all their U.S. debt, so they won't be a player there. Iran obviously doesn't have any. That would be
China.
There's China, and the theory for a long time was that China would dump our debt to put us into trouble.
Yeah,
because if they dump that debt, it would shock the market. They've been slowly divesting themselves of it more quickly since the Russia-Ukraine thing, because they've seen how Russia's strategy has worked out. So
a smart idea too if you're going to go into Taiwan.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So it definitely makes sense for it to be China. It's probably the only one that would be able to push us in that direction.
And that would hurt us because they hold just such a high volume of that.
Yep.
Like, comment, and share, guys. We'll just get going here. Let's get back to the show already in progress.
All right. That one covers that one. Europe's not happy. This chart is just showing the size of the economies that we're talking about. They're talking about Germany, France, and Poland being shut down. So it's what, 30, 40, 44% of economic production between those three countries. So you're looking at basically half the European economy is kind of shut down right now, or having difficulty. Then when they're not completely shut down, but they're certainly not going to be getting goods and services around. So that's going to affect Europe here. But the stock market is still going up, and we're going to dig into that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
busy, brother.
This is all right.
Hopefully you can translate this here to East Tennessee, because
I'll talk slower.
Damn you. Damn you.
Damn Yankees, I'm telling you. All right. Everything was great till the Yankees showed up. All right. So this is the DAX index. This is the German equivalent of the S&P 500. All right. So you'll see here in the last 11 days or so, their stock market's up 3.25%, despite all this trouble, right? And I didn't do the fancy little box on the chart there, but it's up 16% since November 1st of 23. They've been having all kinds of problems. They've been hearing all kinds of bad German economic numbers, and they're having social strife. How is this? It's a great question. How is this possible? It's a question I've been asking myself. Well, there's supply and demand in the stock market, right? You bring more money in, stock market's going to go up. Well, right now, a whole bunch of money is parked somewhere else. So let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
We're slide intensive, but they're going to go fairly quick. We're going to bounce back to the S&P 500 here in the U.S. It's up 18% since November 1st of 23. Usually you figure about
18, almost 19%.
Yep. In 3 months. So if usually you figure about 8-ish% is your average return for the S&P 500 over longer periods of time. So they got just over 2 years worth of returns out of the S&P 500 in 3 months.
This is the German S&P, correct?
No, this is the USA.
Okay.
Yes, USA. Okay.
Right.
But by the same token, we haven't had great economic news during that time. Hasn't been as bad as Europe, but it hasn't been wonderful, right? As Alan Kelly talked about earlier, layoffs are happening, right? We're seeing all that. So what in the world's causing this? Okay. If we go to the next one.
Is it money chasing a return? Is that all? Breaks down
exactly what it is.
Wow.
During this same period of time, this is the 10-year U.S. government bond. This is the yield. So yield down means you're making less money off those bonds, right? Now, if you purchase the bond and hold it all the way to maturity, you'll keep making, at the top of that chart there, basically 5%. You'll make that for your 10 years. But people who trade the bonds are suddenly making less money there. So they're like, I'm making less money in my government bonds. I need to go somewhere else that'll make more money. So when you pull your money out of that government bond, you sell your bond to someone else, and where are you going to put that money? Let's put it in the stock market. and a whole bunch of people decide to do that, supply and demand, whatever that goes into is going to go up. And it went into the stock market. All right.
Okay, now might be a time to just put a pin in exactly what you just said and just pause for a second, because I think I labeled today's show Monday Morning Preparedness with Rich and Will. And this is incredible information. What can we do with it to better prepare ourselves through 2024?
Okay.
Well,
Great
how do I
question.
use this data and go, okay, man, I want to be a better prepared citizen?
Okay, so let's go back to that slide for a second because I'm
Okay.
going to dovetail some of this in there. Okay, so J-Dog, Jerome Powell, in charge of the Federal Reserve, has made it pretty clear he wants to be Volcker 2.0, right? Paul Volcker raised
He does
interest
not.
rates.
He does or does not?
Does.
He does, right?
He does. Wants to be Volcker 2.0. He's going to crush this inflation down, okay? So the stock market is pricing in, they're forecasting this is going to happen, so they're pricing it into stocks that they're going to get 6 rate cuts the remainder of 2023. Now, a rate cut in this term is a quarter point. So 6 rate cuts is 1.5%. Here's the deal. There's 8 Federal Reserve meetings this year. So the stock market is pricing in that in 6 of those, including the one that starts, I think, tomorrow, or maybe it's already today, I can't remember, including this one, which it isn't going to happen. So really they're pricing in 6 in 7. 6 rate cuts and 7 meetings. Okay. You really think that's going to happen with CPI and PCE running above the Fed's target rate? Not going to happen. Okay. So let's dovetail that back in. Why do we care about this? Well, you can see that area where up there on the chart where it's down 22.88% during that period of time. You can see what's happening at the yield now. The yield's going back up. Okay. So yield up, interest rate up. That runs through the economy. And your 30-year mortgage is actually most closely track the 10-year government bond. So that's going to mean things for the housing market. That's going to mean things for employment. That's going to mean things for your 401k if this trend continues. So to go back to your question, why do we care as a couple of self-defense preparedness guys, is analysis like this helps us see over the horizon. And the one thing about the stock market, guys, is anybody who tells you what the stock market is going to do, don't know, right? You're playing percentages. If the yield is going up, then the percentages say stock market is going to go down because people are going to pull money back out of the market and put it back into something safe, which the U.S. government bond is completely safe. You're going to get your money because if nothing else, they're going to print it. So this tells us we've had this big push, and it's going to get harder to keep pushing that rope.
Yeah.
So this dovetails back into, have your physical precious metals, which you and I both have some cash on hand, have a little war chest built up, right? Have some food stored, all these things, because the bad times could befall you.
Well, and I asked this because I had a good friend of ours call me over the weekend and said, "Hey man, I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm listening to you and Will, and should I be just, calling my advisor and pulling money out and putting it into precious metals and building that up even more?" And I'm like, I don't know, brother. I don't know that anybody can tell you the right answer on that one. What would you say to that kind of question?
I agree. It's a percentages game, and you're playing the odds.
Yeah.
So how do I want to see this? And part of that plays into what's your risk tolerance and how often does a person want to trade?
Mm-hmm.
A light day for me is 10 trades. A heavy day is 40 plus. So, but it's very small and incremental, right? I'm not moving 10% of my portfolio at a time, right? And I'm diversifying across a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, it depends on those other factors. If a person is of the mindset that, hey, I just want to set it and forget it, well, then you got to look at age too. I'm in my mid 50s. I can't take a big drawdown at this point in life. Yeah. So my risk tolerance is high, but I'm very active in the market. So even with that, I don't take a lot of drawdowns. Now, if a person was, say, 25 years old, I'd say, the stock market's going to come back at some point. I have faith in America, despite the way I probably sound a lot of times. We've got some big challenges coming here, but if you're looking at a 20, 30, 40-year timeline, yeah, get a good diversified portfolio. And if a person is of the mindset they just want to set it and forget it, yeah, let it run.
We're having this conversation. There's a friend of ours that is considering getting into crypto, and I years ago really looked into it hard, read all the books I could on it, and backed away from the ledge on that one. But I started looking at precious metals. My grandfather's, Jeff is on here. He'll tell you, he carried around $5,100 bills in his front pocket going all the way back to the 70s. And at the time he put it in there, I mean, it would be worth 20K nowadays. But if he would have taken that in 1978, gold was trading for about $390 an ounce.
Mm-hmm.
So given that $5,000, if he would have bought himself 13 gold coins, okay,
Mm-hmm.
with that $5,000, it would now be worth almost $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, $5,000 is, it's not what
Right.
it used to be. So
Right.
as a store of value, man, over the
Mhm.
long term, I mean, there's a lot of comments about bonds, and I'm going to get to those in just a minute. But over the long term, it's hard to beat those precious metals.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that. In that, during that same period of time, if you would have taken that same $5,000 and put in the S&P 500, you'd have a lot more.
Yeah,
now
true.
there's other factors that play into that as well, right?
Mhm.
And neither, and I honestly wouldn't do 100% of either back
Yeah,
then,
exactly.
right? And that's what we're talking about here. I mean, you do want to be diversified. So and the reason the stock market went so much was because the dollar was depegged from gold in 71, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of moving parts within that. It's hard to say, do this, and in 30 years, you'll be fine. Actually, it's not hard. It's impossible.
Yeah. Well, here's what I would say. And again, I don't own a lot of precious metals. I probably don't own nearly as much as I probably should. It's roughly 10% of my portfolio, and it probably may need to go up to 20 over time. I don't know. But if there's, I don't know, a dozen pawn shops in my tiny town, I can walk in there with gold or silver and walk out with cash.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably will continue for as long as people are running around.
Sure.
With crypto, hey, I got a thumb drive with some crypto on it. Can I get cash for this?
Yeah.
They're going to laugh you out of there. And, so again, when we're looking at store of value, guns, ammo, food, real estate, gold, silver, precious metals, I mean, it's hard to beat. I'm not saying go all in, but you probably need to.
Yep. I mean, and there's now with the ETFs that have been approved, the exchange traded funds that have been approved for Bitcoin, you can trade inside of many IRAs, 401ks, or individual brokerage account. So you can get some exposure there as well. And full disclosure, I do have some, both actual on a thumb drive and through the ETFs.
Yeah. Let's get some comments here. Don says, I'm not sure China can afford to dump our debt. They use it as collateral for much of their own internal debt.
True. They have been, I wouldn't say dumping it. Dumping, I think, could be construed as being done quickly. They have been slowly divesting themselves of it over the last 10, 15 years, that sort of thing. And I think that would be one of the warning signs that the Taiwan thing's going to come to a head is if they start actually dumping it quickly.
Will Parker says, what you've been saying over the past 7 minutes, does that insinuate that in the near future, the U.S. government will be offering war bonds?
Not in that. He's got quotes around war bonds. So will they be, shoveling up more debt to finance foreign excursions? Yeah.
Don says, when the stock market gets uncertain, there's always a flight to quality, and that quality is typically government bonds.
Yep. Dead on, brother.
Let's see here. War bonds, indeed. Australia and the UK are talking about conscription into the armed forces. They want our children for a war they are creating.
Wow, I had not heard that.
Let's take on that conscription point as a time to talk about what the Navy is doing with their Tier 3 enlistees. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, go for it, brother.
So again, I was on recruiting for 14 years. There's nothing on the planet I know more about than enlistment. This is what I know better than anything. So there's Tier 1 enlistment, which is somebody has a minimum of a high school diploma or 1 semester of college. Okay. So that makes someone a Tier 1. Tier
Okay.
2 is they've completed the 10th grade and they must score above a 50 on the ASVAB. A tier 3 is someone that I think completed the 9th grade, but they still have to have above a 50 and a 100 on the ASVAB. So your point yesterday when we were texting back and forth on this, you're like, this is going to hurt for the high-tech jobs. Not necessarily, because the education only shows maybe stick-to-itiveness. Do they have the ability to start and finish something, being a 12-year education, right? A traditional education. But their ASVAB score is their IQ. Okay. So when I say you have to score, in order to be a tier 3 applicant, you have to score a 50 over a 100 on the ASVAB. What that means is they're going to be in the 50 plus percentile and have an IQ in excess of 100. So they're going to be above average on intellect. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So education be damned. If somebody dropped out in the 8th grade, and there's plenty of examples out there, and they have an IQ of 120, they're still grossly overqualified for a lot of the high-tech jobs because they're in the 20th percentile of IQ in the nation. So those two things don't correlate.
Okay.
You can look at Edward Snowden as an example of somebody. I don't think he finished the 9th grade, but he was doing programming and shit for the CIA because he might be a traitor, but he's a brilliant traitor. So that right there is how they're going to get around that. And we have traditionally for a long time, before this current debacle, we could enlist 1% of all new accessions could be a tier 3, and up to 5% could be a tier 2 applicant. That's someone with a GED, a 10th grade education, and above a 50 on the ASVAB. And traditionally, what we have found is they don't do well first term. So the first 4 years that they're in, they don't tend to do well because they lack some stick-to-itiveness, as you might imagine.
Okay.
Where you get around that is when I would evaluate the waiver on these kids, it's like, why did you drop out of high school? And if it was drop out of high school, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. We live in some shithole in Appalachia. I had to take care of mama because daddy ran out. Mama's got cancer. Mama's died. Now I'm 22. I've held down a job for 4 years. Like, okay, man, wait a minute. This isn't a kid that just didn't give a shit. This is a kid that he understood his responsibilities with his family, and he took those over an education. And he's been able to keep a gainful employment for 4 years. So that shows me I'm going to approve that waiver. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Gotcha. Yep.
Especially if he's highly intelligent. So a long way around the horn to say maybe much ado about nothing. We'll see how that experiment works.
Good to know. Good information.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. So what does Don say here?
Talk to your financial advisor and let him or her know how you're feeling. They should give you advice based on TOT. Remind me what that one means. Time frame,
Time on target. Yeah.
Objectives, and temperament. And temperament here would be risk tolerance, I assume he's referring to. Even young people can be very, very anxious about their money and the market. The emotional state has value in determining what the asset allocation should be. I want to zone in on exactly one word in there: emotional. People get emotional about their money. Being emotional about the stock market or anything you're investing in or trading is a great way to lose lots of money. It's the time proven way to lose lots of money.
Are you speaking from experience, sir?
I am, as a matter of fact. And that's there's a great book. Oh gosh, it just jumped out of my head. I'll find it and put it up there as you're going through your stuff, brother. Okay. But it is, when you start getting feelings, and by the same token, anytime I'm listening to anybody talk about investments, when they're using emotional words, feels like the market should go up from here. It feels like this. Getting this inkling, anything like that. I don't listen to anything they say after that.
No,
give me numbers.
Yeah.
And this is also why you get Wall Street calls most retail investors dumb money. And what they really should be calling is emotional money, because they don't sit back and just go look at the numbers logically, right? Now, that said, emotions run markets. We have to account for them. Right now, the market's up, what do we say, almost 19% in 3 months. Well, that's going to drive people's emotions because, oh my gosh, we had this money sitting over here in a money market fund, right? Well, if I would have had it over here in the S&P 500, I could be up a whole bunch more money.
Fear of
And
missing
then,
out.
bingo, FOMO, their fear of missing out. Now that's going to drive more money back into the stock market, supply and demand, drive it up more, right? And we go back and forth. That's why charts look like this, up and down, back and forth, because a lot of that is emotion. Now, sometimes a company comes in and reports something, and it's very timely. You brought up the Tesla chart here, because you'll see it's down 30% or basically year to date.
Yeah.
Okay. Now their earnings call was not fun if you were long Tesla.
Yeah.
Okay. Elon did not paint a very pretty picture. He's talking production cuts. Production will not surpass in 2024, will not surpass 23 numbers, brought up a lot of problems. So there's emotion. Sometimes there's reality. And in the case of Tesla stock, there was a lot of reality in this drop. Okay. Now I do find it funny that Elon's saying, well, it was overvalued. It's hard to see. And I wish I would have had the crystal ball going so I knew where this conversation was going to go. But if you look at that green line at the kind of towards the top of that chart there, Rich, that's a line I drew on that chart. That's it. That's the long-term, in this case, downtrend of Tesla stock.
Yeah.
So when he says it was overvalued, it's been marching downward for quite some time. And you'll notice Tesla is volatile. And as we've talked about in the past, I love volatile stocks. So I love Tesla. I trade this back and forth like you wouldn't believe. And but the long-term trend for Tesla stock is down. Now, there was a split in there. So at one point it was 1,200-ish a share. It split, I think, 3-for-1, so down to 400. I'm pretty sure that's right. It might have been a 2-for-1 to 600. I can't remember. Those split the difference and call it 500 a share. Now, as of close on Friday, it's down to 183. And it's got room to go down from there, I believe. Now I think it's gonna bounce back up here short term over the next few weeks, because that you can see that drop there after the earnings. Let's also remember Tesla has missed their earnings estimate 6 of the last 8 quarters.
Oh boy.
Yep. So
yeah. I want to hit Mark's comment real quick. He
Yeah.
says, we don't have technology stocks in Australia, hence our stock market is different. We are all in the property cycle over here.
Okay, so first, full disclosure, I'm long Australia right now because I think it's oversold. And there you go, little emotional world, but I've looked at the charts. I'm more of a chart guy than a numbers guy. So I'm long Australia right now, so not financial advice, but just so you guys know where I'm sitting on that. The Australia is interesting because you guys are property cycle, and then there's also if I'm remembering correctly, a fair amount of commodity exposure there as well. So yeah, I trade everything back and forth. I think Australia got oversold in the past, and so right now I'm long Australia, and it's a very interesting market down there.
How much? Let's go, Jeff's question. How much, if anything, of this is politically motivated against Tesla? Is there any indication of that?
Not that I've seen. I think it'd be really tough for any politician to really drive an individual company's share prices like that. Now, it can be done through policy, but as more companies get into the EV market, it's going to affect, it would affect GM and Ford. Speaking of which, Ford pulled way back on their F-150 electric, I think called the Lightning or something like that. The one that Biden drove and almost ran that reporter over. They've pulled way back on that. I can't remember the exact reasons, but they have. So it's, EVs, in my opinion, they're cool. However, they're almost a symptom of exuberance and excess.
Yeah.
Right. Because and you can listen to the politicians. Well, if you can't afford gas at $4 a gallon, go buy an EV. Well, if I can afford an $80,000 car, I can afford the $4 a gallon gas, you moron. So, but it's a symptom of cheap money, easy loans, and people having excess savings, right?
Yeah.
None of which we have in an inflationary environment.
Negative. Ted says had and have some AUS holdings hoped they would do well against US dollar due to mineral exports.
And the dollar is strengthening right now. And if Powell holds steady with rates here versus dropping rates, and never mind if he increases rates for any reason, the dollar is going to do even better. That's going to drive precious metals. That's going to drive the stock market, because if a stronger dollar equals higher government bond yields, interest rates, that's going to suck money back out of the stock market again if that happens.
Yeah.
So there's the old saying on Wall Street goes, if you get the dollar right, you'll get a lot of other things right.
Yeah. Like, comment, and share, guys. We are just getting going. We still need to talk about the border. We still need to talk about some Americans finally being killed after 159 attacks on our troops in the region. Stay tuned for that.
Yep.
What's going on with the Chinese stock market, Will?
So this is this has been a relatively slow motion disaster. So this is FXI, Foxtrot X-Ray India. This is kind of their large company ETF for China. Okay. Full disclosure, I'm currently long this. I have been short this over a bigger period of time. So let's take a look at this from November 14th of 23 to January 22nd of 24. It was down 22%. That'll leave a mark.
Ouch.
On your portfolio. Okay. So we're talking about
this hurting you, brother?
No, I was short it during that period of time.
Okay. Gotcha.
Go Chinese stock market down. Okay. But let's take a look what happened here. This is pretty common. This is what happens after big sell-offs like this, because it gets overblown because of emotion. And then in 4 days, it went up 7%. Now I say that, but there was something else that happened in there. The Chinese government went, hold on, this isn't good. Our stock market's down a whole bunch. It's down way more than that. We're going to look at a longer term chart here. Next slide. They came in and said, we're going to pump out, I think it was 187 billion US dollars, and it's all going to go into the stock market. Stock market went up 7%, just like that. Okay.
Imagine that.
Same thing basically happens here. Think about COVID when the stimmy checks happened, right? Economy shut down. Stock market went up. Went down real big at first, right? But then it went way up after that, because more money got put into the system. So this goes back to a whole lot of people, including yours truly, are sitting in money markets, government bonds. They've got money on the sidelines, as the saying goes. When things start going up, start moving that money in the stock market. It kind of doesn't matter what the economy is doing, supply and demand, right? So really have to watch this money flow back and forth. And there's a big part of analysts out there on Wall Street right now who are looking at all this money on the sidelines and going, every time the stock market takes a dip over the last number of months, people pull money out of their money markets, their government bonds, and put it in the stock market. And this is kind of putting a floor under the stock market right now until there's a catalyst for it to drop. Now, we had a pretty big catalyst last March, right? We had SVB, we had Silicon Valley Bank, we had Signature Bank. There was another one with West in the name, right? Yeah. And what did J-Dog do right away after all of his tough talk? What did he do right away? He printed a bunch of money and bailed them out.
Yep.
So he can talk about being Volcker 2.0. He can carry Volcker's book around, but what happened when brass tacks hit? He printed money. And you think the Biden administration or any administration, could be a Trump administration, if in the same time frame, right? Coming up on an election, you think they're going to not fight back against some sort of catalyst that would drive the economy and stock market down? You bet they're going to fight back. I don't care. Team red, team blue, doesn't matter. That's what they're going to do. So it's going to be which force is going to win in 24.
I don't have much faith.
I wish I knew. Okay. Long term, I'm with you. This is a relatively short period of time. We're looking 10 months now, right? The Biden administration is going to fight back against anything bad. They're going to put, and they don't have to depend on Powell to print money. If they can sell enough treasury bills and bonds on the open market to get the money, they can go spend it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and to Don's comment a while back, if things start going bad in Europe, and things are pretty bad in Europe right now, and people don't want their money in the Chinese stock market, right? Where's their flight to safety? U.S. government bonds. Who gets the money when somebody buys U.S. government bond? U.S. government, and then they can go spend it. right?
And they do. Like a
And
drunken
they're
sailor.
really good at that part, right? So there's a whole lot of moving parts happening here. And oh yeah, by the way, in the meantime, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in Texas you're going to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So there's a let's go to, I think it was Alan's comment. You just splashed it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember that little company we talked about, Evergrande in China?
Evergrande.
Did you happen to see the latest news on Evergrande that
I
just
did
came out?
because you sent it to me.
What was it, brother?
Let me, so I could get to it here. I think they're taking them to bankruptcy court or something like that.
Even worse than that.
Evergrande was ordered liquidated by a Hong Kong court per Bloomberg, and that was when that come out this morning.
Yesterday,
last night.
Yep, last night. That's what I read in when I'm laying down and going to sleep, guys. I know you're jealous. I know you're jealous. Okay. All right. It's either that or I'm searching car parts, one of the two. Okay. So Evergrande's liquidating. That's pretty darn big. That's their real estate market is where a lot of their wealth is tied up. And remember, they pre-buy the homes. Before the home is built, you get the mortgage and start making payments. So a whole lot of people aren't ever going to get what they paid for.
Yeah.
Have been paying on.
So it's going to wipe out some people and could lead to some internal unrest. But, China has a good way of dealing with that at the point of a bayonet.
Yep. Okay. So, Mark's comment here. Let's touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
How many stocks are lifting the market? Are they mostly tech stocks? You'll hear them called the Magnificent Seven. I'm going to miss a couple here. Google, Apple, you know the names. NVIDIA especially. And NVIDIA is legit. Full disclosure, I'm long NVIDIA. There's 7 tech stocks that are for 2023 accounted for something like the last quarter may have changed this number a little bit, so bear with me, guys. Those 7 stocks, the Magnificent Seven, drove something like 89% of the S&P 500 return. So the S&P 493 was basically flat for the year. And any given day, you can have 3 or 4 tech stocks. Let's say this S&P goes up 1% in a day. You can have any of those given 3 tech stocks account for well over half of that daily move in the S&P 500. So diversified in the S&P 500, you got to put big old air quotes around that right now.
Yeah.
So that's not a sign of a healthy stock market. It's called breadth. So you want to see the whole market moving up, not just a few. And we should probably do a show on how concentrated things are and the dangers of passive investing. In other words, buying that S&P 500 fund. It's been working really well for the last 10, 15, 25 years, but it's bringing dangers to the market right now that are hidden to the person that doesn't follow this stuff very much. Mm-hmm. So back to China here with this next slide. There's an old saying in especially following charts in stock markets. It's real easy to get caught up in the 1 minute chart, the 5 minute chart, heck, the 1 second chart, and get caught up in the noise. So when in doubt, zoom out. Look at the big picture, right? So if we go back to the peak, remember I told you the Chinese stock market is going down a lot. This is the same Chinese stock market, FXI. If you go from 8 February of 21 to 16 January 24, that's a 57% drop in their market.
Damn.
Yeah, that'll leave a mark, let me tell you. Okay. And then that you can almost see it at the right there. You can see that little blip up. That's their 7% move in 4 or 5 days after they print 187 billion yuan in US dollars. Mm-hmm. Okay. But let's take a bigger view of this. Look where I circled that red, Rich. That was from 2020 to 21. Their stock market went up a whole bunch. And then it went down. So let's think about this in the context of things. China is an exporting country. Mm-hmm. For them to export, somebody else has to be importing and consuming, buying those things, right?
Right.
So what happened in 20 to 21? We had a whole lot of excess money floating around the system in the US and Europe, right?
Yeah.
What people do? They bought a lot of stuff. And then guys like you and I talked about supply chain problems, right?
Yep.
What does this chart during that 8 February 21 to 16 January 24, what's that tell you about Chinese exports? It's been going down.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right.
But
And
how? Where's the floor though? Do you have any idea?
got me.
Yeah.
I don't know. And they also, let's remember, China imports almost all the raw materials they use to produce exports. And I'm sure Mark can tell us about that because Australia for sure exports a lot of coal to China for their power plants. Hashtag global warming. And so this starts affecting other countries that they import from as well. So this, we're trying to figure out, okay, where's the catalyst? I mean, my opinion, not financial advice, is we're toppy right now. This is something's going to give here eventually. What's it going to be? I don't know, but I think China is the canary in the coal mine. Look what's happened to their stock market over 3 years, and it's not all over the news, is it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So why? I mean, you're talking about a huge drop here. If the S&P 500 was down by that much over 3 years, it'd be news.
Oh yeah.
And so does this mean this is going to happen to the whole rest of the world? Not necessarily, because China, as our economies have slowed, China is basically slaves to the rest of the world's economy because they export to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it a leading indicator or a lagging indicator? Nobody really knows for sure.
Yeah.
But the clue will be if this starts turning back up, that'll be a clue of the economy strengthening.
Hmm.
And you can see it's not going up. So this is something to kind of keep an eye on. And then, of course, it brings in, over this period of time, if their stock market is down 57%, this also means these companies aren't doing well. Well, they have really high youth unemployment over there. How do you get people to forget about these problems? Oh yeah, go see that beach over there.
Yeah.
Go walk up that and shoot at the people who are shooting at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, people forget about this other stuff real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it all dovetails together. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Okay, so
Oof.
now let's bring it back over to Europe for a moment. This is from The Guardian. Quote, anti-European populists on track for big gains in the EU elections. A couple things to point out in this article here. Polling in 27 EU member states shows radical right parties. Now, bear in mind, this is European radical right. We would probably call these people Democrats here. Okay. On course to finish first in 9 countries, including Austria, France, and Poland. Now, given the current strife in France and Poland, I'd say that's probably a given, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're projected, these far right populists are projected to come in second or third place in 9 other countries, including Germany, Spain, Portugal, and Sweden, which could, for the first time, produce a majority right wing coalition in these governments. Now, when was the last time we got a really populist leader in Europe? How'd that work out?
Was it Hitler?
Yeah.
Mussolini?
How'd it work out the other times in Europe, right? So you've got this influx of immigrants from the Middle East, and you can go on Twitter and you can find all kinds of videos of the strife happening because of that. And then the counter protests, right? And then you got the farmers, people who make the food, who the Germans helped vilify in the lead up to World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Being vilified. You've got the World Economic Forum, hashtag John Kerry, vilifying farmers, right? I like farmers. I like to eat.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big fan of people who make my food. Okay. Mm-hmm. But look at the direction Europe's going. Oh, and by the way, their economy isn't doing so hot.
That's a lot. That's a constellation of issues.
I should get you had your background. I should get like a whole bunch of sunshine back here behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Got a nice white wall to do that with now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So this is something to watch, guys. There's a lot of dynamics coming together here. And now as the dollar is strengthening, that means the euro is also weakening, which is not going to help their economy.
Well, what is the pound has done really well since they left EU. I can tell you that from being over there. It was a lot more expensive this time around.
I can tell you that from having traded it. Yeah. So, and this is then we'll bring it back to the U.S. here. Nikki Haley, no matter how you feel about her positions versus Trump, Biden, whatever, this is another symptom in our country. She was swatted at her South Carolina home. Now, that's when somebody calls in a fake thing to get the cops to go there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a cop, never been a cop, but I'll tell you what, if I was a cop, I'd be like, I need the addresses. If somebody like Nikki Haley lived in my jurisdiction, I'd be like, I need that address.
Yeah.
Because if somebody gets called in there, you need to be a little bit suspicious. Is it real? Right? You want to get there in case it's real. But you also need to be like, okay, people are going to be playing these games, right? But this is another way for people to use the technology that's out there to do nefarious things. And this is not a sign of a populace that's happy with either side. I'm sure eventually it's going to happen the other way. It's kind of hard to swat 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue,
Yeah.
but I'm sure on a
Mar-a-Lago.
I'm sure it's much. I'm sure it'll happen on more local levels, right?
Yeah.
So,
oh boy, now
Yeah.
let's get into the more sunshine here.
Okay,
Thank you to the 10 folks. Please like and hit that share button. We're going to talk about what's going on at the border now, man, and catch you guys up to speed, because I was having dinner with my family last night, and it seemed like most of the women in my family were like, what's going on? What? So let's fill you in here. This is from the Harvard Harris poll, which is an amazing poll. I encourage you to look at it. This was through the end of December, okay, but it was published in January. I've got to have a link to it in here in just a moment. So when asked what would most respondents say is the biggest issue facing the nation, it is now immigration. It has overtaken price increases and inflation. It's up 7 percentage points. And if you want to pause here, if you're watching the replay, and actually dig into the demographics of whether it's Democrats or Republicans who thinks immigration is the biggest issue, please feel free to do that. But when you ask those same respondents, for you personally, what is the biggest problem? And there's the link to the Harvard Harris poll.com. It is inflation. So when they say it's nationally, what's the biggest problem? It's immigration. Personally, what's the biggest problem? It's inflation. I think that's an interesting thing there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also would matter where you.
Can I jump in there just for a second?
Yeah.
The thing is, inflation affects all of us throughout the country.
Mhm.
Up here in northern Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, I'm aware of the immigration issue and following what's happening, but it's not really affecting me.
Correct.
So it's real easy to say inflation is a bigger issue. I'd be probably thinking differently if I lived in Brownsville, Texas.
Yes.
So I think that maybe those numbers are falling the way they are.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I encourage you to go read the whole poll. It's like 60 something slides. You can drill down at it as much as you want, but no one is going to accuse Harvard of being right leaning with any of their data. So I really find it interesting. Day one executive orders that exacerbated the border crisis. So this is 12 of the 17 executive orders that Biden signed on day one of his administration. He signed 17. 12 of them were complete Trump order reversals.
Okay.
And these are the ones that affected immigration. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 17 he signed were destroying the immigration things that President Trump had put into place. And again, I'm not necessarily a cheerleader for Trump. I'm just saying, ask yourself if things were better. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll leave it at that. But
Ronald Reagan's old statement, right? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah. So we're getting into the border crisis. Please like and hit that share button, guys. Let's talk about each one of these executive orders a little bit more in detail. Unwinding Trump's changes to the census. This is an interesting one. Trump put in place that in order to be counted on the census, you have to be legally in this country, or give me some rope on this, but that's basically what it boiled down to. Biden abolished that. No. We need an accurate census count. Now, why would he want to do that? Count illegals into the census?
To affect the number of seats in the House of Representatives.
Interesting. The second thing, strengthen legal protections for dreamers. That's hundreds of thousands of people that have been here since they were kids. Many of them now have families, et cetera, but they're still here illegally. But we're going to give them a pass. Okay. Yep. The third thing, abolish the Muslim ban. Now, the Muslim ban that Trump put into place was a 90-day moratorium on Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Yemen. and the resettlement of Syrian refugees into our country. Does that sound like a good thing? Are those countries our friends?
Maybe we should ask the Europeans about this and how
Exactly.
that's worked out over there.
Now, the Supreme Court ultimately approved a third version of Trump's executive order and let it go into effect. And they actually added a couple of countries, which is interesting. They included Venezuela and North Korea. In 2020, the Trump administration expanded visa restrictions on 6 more countries. You can see them listed there. And it was working. Of course, our current sitting president completely abolished that and lets them in. No shocker there. He canceled the Trump administration's interior enforcement rule. And what that did was it gave more power to people inside the United States. Let's say if a cop picks up somebody in Wisconsin, they are here illegal, he can actually do something about it. Mm-hmm. President Joe Biden made sure we get rid of that. Yep. He halted construction on the Mexican border wall. That was Executive Order 13, stop building the wall. Mm-hmm. Executive Order 14, extended deportation protection for Liberians here illegally. And Executive Order 17 was freeze Trump's midnight regulations. So, again, these are things designed to make the crisis worse. And guess what happened? It's gotten worse.
Mm-hmm. Funny how that works.
Yeah. So I'm going to break this down in chronological order. And I got this. The source is CNN. Okay. So this all kind of started January the 10th. Okay. On that Wednesday, the Texas National Guard blocked the Border Patrol from placing mobile surveillance equipment inside Shelby Park. We're going to call it probably Eagle Pass, but they're somewhat synonymous. I'll show you a map here in just a second. And they started, Texas started denying Border Patrol agents accessing several miles, about 2.5 miles along the border. Around that time, they started erecting razor wire and fencing and gates to shut off access to the federal government at Shelby Park and adjoining golf course as well. Flash forward to Friday, and this became Friday, January the 12th. We had a woman and 2 children die. I can't say whether she was the mother of the 2 children. I don't think at this point anybody knows, but suffice it to say, a woman and 2 children drowned trying to cross right there at Shelby Park, which is, of course, a tragedy. And the acting Border Patrol supervisor for that area advised 3 National Guardsmen in that area that, hey, man, lady had just drowned and there's 2 other people in signs of distress on this side of the thing. Y'all need to do something about it. And the staff sergeant there allegedly told the Border Patrol was not allowed in that area, even in emergency situations, close quotes. And indeed, the staff sergeant sent the Texas Guardsmen to investigate what was going on. So here's the area that we're talking about, the potential conflict area. You can see it's a 2.5 mile area. Texas authorities have blocked the U.S. Border Patrol agents. You've got the international bridge, which is fine. Texas ain't messing with that. The bridge is still working as it should. It's a legal point of entry. Have at the international bridge all you want. But what you're not going to do is stage people like they had been doing underneath that bridge. And at one point, there was over 71,000 migrants being processed underneath that bridge. And Texas has had enough. So we move forward to January the 13th. Please hit that share button. People need to understand what's going on. Texas officials were able to recover the bodies of the drowned mother and 2 children. The second group of migrants, including the 2 men who made it to the U.S. side of the river, these 2 men were rescued by Mexican authorities. Also on January the 13th, Texas allowed Border Patrol access to the boat ramp in Shelby Park area, but with restrictions such as requiring information about each Border Patrol agent entering the area and offer limiting access to the agency. So they're like, hey, you can come in. Who is he and why does he need to come in here? And I'm sure they're writing it down on a clipboard somewhere.
Yes.
Monday, January the 15th, a Border Patrol agent drove through the access road within the 2.5 mile area of Eagle Pass, but the agent was stopped and questioned by Texas National Guard. On January the 15th, the Biden administration submitted a fine to the Supreme Court. Once again, what does it, Ron Emanuel say? Never let a crisis go to waste, and they did not. They had this drowned woman and 2 children, and they run to the Supreme Court to get an injunction based on this, right? Saying, oh, my God, if the razor wire hadn't been there, these people wouldn't have died. So this is one of the things that they did. And let's see here. Let me blow this up. The drownings, as well as the rescue of the 2 migrants on the side of the Rio Grande by Mexican authorities, underscore that Texas, quote, underscores that Texas is firm in its continued efforts to exercise complete control of the border and land, close quote, in the area and to block Border Patrol access to the border, even in emergency circumstances, the administration wrote to the Supreme Court. So on Wednesday, January the 17th, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security set the date as a deadline for when Texas authorities must end its blockade of Eagle Pass and allow federal agents to resume operations in that area. If Texas did not agree to comply at the end of the day, the DH said it would refer the matter to the Department of Justice for appropriate actions. But Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office doubled down, saying Texas will not surrender. That's a quote. He sent a 3-page letter rebutting some of the federal government's claims as false. Flash forward now to Monday, January the 22nd, and the Supreme Court voted 5-4 to allow Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire set up by the Texas government. And this is where things get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Texas had sued to stop Border Patrol agents from cutting their concertina wire last year, saying it was illegally destroying state property and undermining the security of the Republic of Texas. The Department of Homeland Security said, quote, enforcement of immigration law is federal responsibility. Rather than helping to reduce irregular migration, the state of Texas has only made it harder for frontline personnel to do their jobs and apply consequences under the law. But Texas governor said he's not backing down. Says this is not over. Texas razor wire is an effective deterrent to illegal crossings that Biden encourages. Texas Governor Greg Abbott posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, I will continue to defend Texas's constitutional authority to secure the border and prevent the Biden administration from destroying our property. Now, this is something that's interesting here, and it's playing out as all this is going down. On January the 17th, same day, you had lots of former FBI directors and deputy directors and assistant directors put this note out to the administration. And basically, one of the quotes I think that's interesting here says, in modern U.S. history, the U.S. has never suffered an invasion of the homeland, and yet one is unfolding now. So you have the governor of the Republic of Texas, and he's saying there's a problem, and then bang, you got all these, and I would encourage you to go read this because, again, mainstream media is not talking about it. But they sent it to Congress, and I think the title of it is Invasion at the Border and Perilous for America. We're still unfolding here. Tuesday, January the 23rd, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security sent a letter to Texas Attorney General reiterating the federal government's demand state authorities fully reopen it. This time, the Department of Homeland Security cited the Supreme Court's ruling allowing federal authorities to cut the razor wire, arguing that it has a legal right. And then on Wednesday, January the 24th, the next day, a law enforcement person, a source for CNN, said federal agents were standing ready to breach the fencing to render aid to any individual in distress or otherwise deemed operationally necessary. Texas government issued a statement accusing the Biden administration of failing to fulfill, and it's this statement that we're going to talk about next. And I won't go into detail, but I encourage everybody to read this thing because to me, this harkens back to the petition to King George. First Continental Congress, they really put a lot of time and effort into writing this petition, and it's an incredible work. It goes off. They try to send it to King George, and there's a ship has to come back, and they realize that salt water's kind of messed the letter up, so they rewrite it, put it back on a ship. It arrives in December to King George. Ben Franklin says, he's sitting in Parliament, and it gets thrown on the table along with a bunch of other intelligence that they've got going on about what's going on in the colonies. Nobody read it. King George never got to see it. And it just kind of speeds along. And the reason I bring that up, that King George never saw this thing, is because when, I don't know if it's Steve Ducey or someone was asking the White House spokesman about the letter and about the 25 Republican governors that we're going to talk about in just a second, she's like completely caught off guard. Like, how many governors? What are you talking about? It was an absolute clown show, man. So again, I go back to, this is a really bold moment. And if you read some of the language in this thing here, under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 states in this country. This illegal refusal to listen to what he just said.
Yeah.
This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. He goes on to say, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and other visionaries who wrote the Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. That is why the framer included the certain articles that he is now invoking as his means by which he's going to, if you will, subvert the federal government's authority and protect his state. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you what, I'm glad you touched on that part about James Madison. I was reading that while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
This has all the harbingers of turning into a really big deal. It's a big deal right now.
It is a big deal right now.
It could go really big.
In your lifetime, do you remember a governor doing something like this?
No. I also don't remember a time when a president was ignoring such a threat to the sovereignty of the country, and specifically the states down there. All of them are going through this. Texas just happens to be the one standing up for this.
They're being joined.
They are being joined for sure.
Yeah.
Is this a good spot to stop and grab a couple comments, or?
Yeah, man. Let's get some comments here. Go
ahead. Mark brought up a point here. He says, we are hearing about the Texas border, and bear in mind, Mark is in Australia. It is a worry. You don't need that many people to pick vegetables. Now, here's one way I dovetail illegal immigration into Wisconsin, and really all of us, is whatever they're doing here, right? I'll ask people, what's a gallon of milk cost? And they'll say $4 or whatever it is. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I go, really? Because up here in Wisconsin, a lot of our dairy farms are crewed by illegals.
Yeah.
But then they use social services, right? So some of my tax money goes to that.
Uh-huh.
So what's a gallon of milk really cost? The answer is we don't know, because some of my taxes are going in keeping that price down because of those lower labor costs. Now, that's a little off from his point, but he's absolutely correct that all these people coming across are not taking jobs, right? And where we're seeing a lot of the jobs taken, I mean, they're moving up. It was at one time, it was the proverbial picking vegetables in California or what have you. But now we're seeing it more in construction, right? Better paying jobs, holding those wages down. That hurts ordinary Americans who would otherwise get those jobs, but they're going to demand a higher wage, right? So it's working its way up the socioeconomic chain. And I've always argued that until it starts taking college professor jobs and politician jobs, they aren't going to care.
Yeah, the concern though for me isn't, who's coming. And economic thing is a distant second to the military age males that are pouring across the border.
Yes.
And where they're coming from and what their intentions may be.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the video of the guy that came across?
Oh, of course. I hope everybody did.
Yeah.
The one that said, you'll know who I am soon enough. And they, of course.
Let me see if I'll find it here. I'll send it to you and we can play
that. Yeah, this is the governor of, I think, South Dakota, Kristi Noem, said there could be a violent situation. She pledged to hand deliver more razor wire down there herself. Craig Holland in the UK said, welcome to our world. Yeah, you guys in the UK have had this problem for a while. I want to get to, while Will is looking at that, let's continue on with the border crisis. So we've got Governor Greg Abbott has written this letter to President Biden. He claims that, I've handed President Biden 8 different letters, which I don't know if he's read. And again, I go back to the petition to King George. And King George never read any of them either. Okay. Because he's got better things to do. Right. And of course, how'd that work out?
Yeah.
Craig can tell us how it worked out over there in the UK. We'd still be the colonies, perhaps, if he read the damn thing, because they did not want to leave. I mean, if you read the document, it is filled with, we are subjects of the crown. We love, His Majesty. We don't want to do this. Please listen to what we're saying. And of course, he just threw it in the trash. Mm-hmm. So back to the chronology here. Thursday, January the 27th, 25 U.S. Republican governors signed a statement backing Texas Governor Greg Abbott in his fight against the federal government over border control. Quote, this is what their letter said. We stand in solidarity with our fellow Governor Greg Abbott in the state of Texas and utilizing every tool and strategy, including razor wire fences, to secure the border. And it goes on to say, because the Biden administration has abdicated its constitutional compact duties to the states, Texas has every legal justification to protect the sovereignty of our states and our nation. And that's important because it's not just a damn Texas problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a Texas problem. It's our states and our national sovereignty at stake. And I think when you
And
look at it through that lens, it's a little different, isn't it?
absolutely it is. And let's look at what has happened over time with, I'll just pick out Chicago and New York City as the sanctuary cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were all high and mighty until buses started showing up, and now they're like, please stop, it's straining our budget. And Abbott's like, yeah, welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the number of buses he sent up there in just a minute because it's pretty interesting. Let's see. So Friday, let's see. This is the just past Friday. This is the second deadline set by the Department of Homeland Security for Texas to agree to fully reopen the disputed area there at Eagle Pass. Quote, by January the 26th, 2024, please confirm that the state will provide U.S. Border Patrol with the access described above. Written by the Department of Homeland Security General Counsel Jonathan E. Meyer, wrote in a letter to Attorney General Paxton. If the state refuses the requested access in the park, but not in whole, please specify what actions you intend to deny. And they're just telling them to kiss their ass. They're not doing anything. Matter of fact, this is pulled this off Twitter, but I fact checked this, and this is something that Governor Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, said on Tucker Carlson's show. It said, quote, if they asked him about if he was prepared in the event that Biden attempts to take control of the National Guard, Governor Greg Abbott said that would be a boneheaded move on his part, a total disaster. Abbott said, we are prepared in the event that unlikely event does occur, in quotes. He went on to say, and this is interesting here, we do have other armed state employees on the border as we speak right this minute, and that's the Texas Department of Public Safety, as well as other law enforcement officers, as well as National Guard from other states. And you can be assured there will be more National Guard from other states and more law enforcement officers within the state of Texas and other states. And this is where it gets interesting, because this has not happened since 1860. This level of, so there you go. You heard it from Greg Abbott himself. This is what the governors that have signed the pledge that they support Texas, and many of them are mobilizing their National Guards to send down there. I think DeSantis has sent a caravan of his law enforcement officers that way. And of course, you have upwards of 700,000 truckers and bikers headed that way. I think they're leaving from Virginia today.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. The only governor that did not send his folks down there, I believe, is New Hampshire. That's the green state right there.
And we know why. TC's not there anymore.
No.
If Dr. Fuller was there, he would have some influence.
I wanted to talk about the January fact sheet on Operation Lone Star, which is what Greg Abbott has put in place since December of 2021 until now. They have apprehended almost 500,000 illegal immigrants, with more than 38,700 criminal arrests, of more than 35,000 felony charges in the fight against fentanyl crisis. Texas law enforcement, this is insane numbers. Listen to this. Okay. Texas law enforcement has seized over 454 million lethal doses of fentanyl during this border mission. And I want to pause there, man, because I'm trying to think, how does this look if you go down to Eagle Pass and you have parents of children that died from fentanyl overdoses, normal American kids that thought they were going to use a recreational drug and they didn't know it was laced with fentanyl, and they're dead.
Yeah.
And you have them wearing all black and they've linked arms in front of the border, and you have Texas get out of the way and go, hey man, come on in, push these parents out of the way.
Yep.
And cut the damn wire to let more of this fentanyl come in and kill Americans. The optics of that, I think, would just play havoc with this administration.
Oh, absolutely. And be unignorable by the mainstream media.
Yeah. Craig over there in the UK says you should deport them all, but don't send Prince Harry back. We don't want him.
Let us know how you really feel. Don't hold back now, brother.
Yeah. Mark says fentanyl is the new weapon of choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The drugs are coming in.
And if you go listen to some stuff with Ed Calderon, he's had some recent ones. He's former law enforcement in Mexico, lives here in the States now, I believe, for the most part. He digs deep into this in some of the interviews he's been on, most recently with Jack Carr, about how the Chinese are helping with the fentanyl crisis over there.
Yeah, they are, and that's my point. You know, you got China supplying the chemicals, Mexican cartels are making the drugs and importing it here. And Don says that much fentanyl is enough to kill the entire population of our country, and still no one considers it an attack by a chemical weapon of mass destruction.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is the interesting part because you talk about this migrants being bussed. This is as of since April of 2022. Governor Greg Abbott has sent almost 13,000 migrants to Washington, D.C. 31,000 has been sent to Chicago. And of course, now you've got the mayor of Chicago having panic attacks. Oh my God, what am I going to do with this? Yeah, exactly, man. Welcome to what Texas has been having to deal with.
In Chicago, it's been New York City as well, but I just saw the Chicago one most recently. The African American population is pissed.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like, oh, you got money for them, but you didn't have money for our neighborhoods. Every time we wanted something for a playground or a way to have the youth have something to do to keep them on the straight and narrow, there was never money for that. But these people show up and you have money. So this is going to affect their elections too. In these deep blue cities, there's going to be some people who wake up and smell the coffee.
Yeah, 100%. Which goes back to that book, The Calm Before the Storm, or The Storm Before the Calm.
Yeah,
it talks about how you will see the Black community in America becoming conservative or something like that. And you kind of scratch your head, but when you see stuff like this, maybe. Operation. This is a quote from their January fact sheet of Operation Lone Star. Operation Lone Star continues to fill the dangerous gaps created by the Biden administration's refusal to secure the border. Every individual who is apprehended or arrested and every ounce of drugs seized would have otherwise made their way into communities across Texas and the nation due to President Joe Biden's open border policies. And that's why I wanted to start with, it shows where his administration was on day one when they could do anything they want. They could do anything they want. They came in and enacted 7 of the 17 policies were to destroy and create and exacerbate the border crisis. Now, I think this is almost the last slide. Where are we at on the points? And I got a phone call over the weekend from another friend says, oh my God, where are we at on the points scale? And really, this is we're getting into these black swan events. You know, we had Speaker McCarthy getting kicked out back in October. You know, are they going to bring back some more of the mandatory jabs? And then another black swan I've got an asterisk by is this border crisis. Texas failing to comply with SCOTUS and POTUS at the moment. You got the convoy heading that way. And this is what I fear, the last one there. Bank accounts, 401ks, IRAs, Social Security entitlements to U.S. citizens frozen due to political affiliation or because they're part of the convoy. We saw Justin Trudeau do it, guys. Don't think this administration won't do it as well. What do you think?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that thread. Here's so I was talking with a buddy yesterday, and I sent you this text, Rich. So I've been going back and forth with this other friend, and I kind of came up with this off the top of my head. I want to hear your thoughts on it, and anybody else's too. So it could get interesting if Biden takes command of the Texas National Guard.
Yeah.
It will get more interesting if the 26 states send Guard troops to back up Abbott. And by that, I mean a significant number, not 1 or 2 per state. It will get very interesting if Biden sends regular army to force Texas to comply. And it will get medieval if citizens stand in front of those Guard troops daring the feds to do something.
I agree with that.
And at the time that I wrote this, I had forgotten or didn't know about the truckers and the bikers headed down there. That sets up that dynamic real fast.
Yeah.
So
that's a great one. Whoever put that together, because that's a spot on.
It's and as you said, we've seen what happened in Canada, and Justin Trudeau is on video saying he's kind of envious of China because of their dictatorial ability to just do whatever they want. Now, he was dumb enough to say it out loud. Biden won't do that. He's played the game long enough. He's not going to say it out loud, but watch what they're doing. Yeah. It's the same sort of thing. Look what they tried during COVID with everything, right? the infrastructure has been put in place to make a run at something like this, and it goes back to states' rights, right?
Mhm.
And this one's complicated because it's a state border and a national border.
Yeah.
So there's a dynamic there as well, for sure. I just, man, it's got the ability to get ugly, and it's warming up down there. So it's not like it's the dead of winter, and the weather is going to help, kind of calm things down because nobody wants to stand out in the cold. It's quite the opposite. It's warming up down there, and I mean
Yeah.
that in more ways than one, of course.
Yeah. Alan says, doesn't Abbott have to sign off on federalization of the National Guard? I
Hmm.
think there's a clause that they can get around, because if you think back to Governor Wallace down in Alabama, when I think Kennedy had to federalize the Guard to let
Hmm.
the African Americans go to the school down there or something like that. I don't quote me on that. I'll have to dig into that one. I'm sure there's a way around it if you had a rogue governor doing something you didn't agree with. But I guess the bigger issue is, where do the loyalties lie, and would some of the officers under Greg Abbott say, "Yep, I'm not doing it. My
Yep.
allegiance is to the Republic of Texas." So kiss my ass. We'll
Yep.
see. But I want to go to Mark question. Rich, have you got the 10 points yet? No, we're at 7. And let's look how we got there. The
Hmm.
extreme MAGA Republican speech, September of 2022. We had I said if President Trump received a gag order, I would give 3 points. He's actually gotten 2 gag orders. And I've only awarded 1.5 points for that because they were very narrow in scope. But then you throw in, Melania, the former First Lady's mother, passed away, and the judge wouldn't let the former president of the United States attend the funeral.
Hmm.
It's disgusting.
Yep.
And then you had Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, say that Trump supporters needed formal deprogramming. Formal deprogramming. Okay, that a
Hmm.
point. We've got these black swan events, whether it's the invasion of Hamas, et cetera. I don't know where that's going to go. 45th president disqualified from a state ballot. I said I would give that 2 points. I've currently only given it 1.5. And that's because I think it will get overturned in Colorado. We'll see if it stands. The Supreme Court doesn't take it. I'll up it to 2, and we'll be at 7.5 points. So we're moving along at a pretty brisk pace.
Yes, we are. Um, I'm sending you another link here, brother, from Twitter X, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
formerly known as Prince. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I really want to play that one in case folks haven't seen that, because that one's chilling.
Yeah.
So,
And look at Don Bothwell's comment, man. I wasn't aware of
um,
that. I'm going to have to read into that one.
he says, remember, guys, Northcom signed an agreement with Canada several years ago to allow for forces from each other's countries to come across the border to help the other country with internal conflict. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at the trucker situation up in Canada with that. And then, of course, now as it applies here, wow. That one,
Yeah.
if that gets implemented, how many points does that get, brother?
Oh, I will just go back to the UK, and you're like, where did Rich go? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting by a peat fire in the Highlands. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So, what we got here?
Oh, this happened last night, or actually probably yesterday morning local time in Jordan. As of Friday, there had been 158 attacks on U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq and Syria. And Jordan had kind of been a safe area so far. They hadn't really attacked Jordan, but this outpost, Tower 22, they call it, is right up there at the very apex of where three countries come together, right up there in the corner of Jordan. So it was a really good place to watch. We don't know why the anti aircraft, whatever they had, some sort of iron dome protecting the space, why it failed to keep the drones out, but confirmed in a statement Sunday morning that 3 servicemen were killed and 34 injured in a one-way drone attack that impacted a base in northeast Jordan. 8 injured service members were medically evacuated to receive higher level of care. They were sent to Germany. As I understand, the number of wounded is expected to rise. But I want more so than the tragic loss of life of our servicemen and women that are over there keeping that region safe and trying to stop ISIS spread, is what the Biden administration has done relative to those 158 attacks. It's a little jab here and a little poke there. And, you had a UK tanker get hit and set on fire over the weekend. this regional conflict, man, I think because we've tried to keep the 10-ounce gloves on and kind of box with these folks, it's led to them continue to up the ante, and now we have dead Americans. What say you, sir?
Oh, absolutely. This is, and so far the administration response to this has been muted. It's it is not a strong response, and weak responses, especially in that part of the world, will get you more attacks.
That's exactly
So
right.
this is they understand one thing there, and that's strength. And we are not showing strength at all. We're letting the Houthis pretty much do what they want. Yeah, we launch a few attacks, but they already live in mud huts, you know.
Where are the
Right?
Houthis getting all this money from? Of course, they're getting from Iran, but
right.
where did Iran suddenly became flush with cash over the last 3 years? Any idea where they got all that money?
Rhymes with China, you know.
Also rhymes with Biden. Biden unlocked a lot,
Yeah, that's
billions
true.
of dollars.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yep, good point. And
Yeah.
they're going to get logistical backing through Russia as well. And what Russia has learned during the Ukrainian situation, conflict, war. So there's going to be a lot of sharing of knowledge there. And then of course this plays into making America look weak. There's the oil side of it, which drives our economic numbers, which is, you know, my thing. So I come back to that. It just weakens America's presence in the world, which benefits a lot of countries.
Yeah. So the response has to be really, really, really significant. It cannot be another weak response, especially in election year.
Yeah.
You have dead America. He's already got Americans killed in that disastrous pull in Afghanistan. Please let's not forget about that.
Yeah.
One of them is from my hometown of Coreyton, Tennessee. Just, you know, one of the finest Americans this country's ever produced, killed because of the absolutely horrendous withdrawal, humiliating withdrawal in Afghanistan. We cannot let the Secretary Austin off the hook. We cannot let General Milley off the hook for that disaster and that debacle. And of course, we can't let this administration off the hook. Now you got more Americans killed because of weakness. And I don't know. It's disgusting. What does Craig Holland say?
If Trump gets back in with all the immigrants leaving along with all the people who tried to prosecute him. Yeah. It's boy, you imagine how tumultuous that will be if it even looks like he's going to win, much less wins. I mean, the protests we saw after the 2016 election are going to pale in comparison to what we see come November, whatever the date's going to be, early November after that election and leading up to it. This summer could get really sporty.
Yeah, November the 5th, man. Put it on your calendar. I probably won't leave the house that day. I'll be watching the news all day long.
It's going to be interesting. That is for sure. Did you get that? What do you have left here, brother?
Only one I have left is I don't have anything from you.
You don't?
No. Where did you send it at?
Emailed it to you.
You did? Email. Let me check.
Yeah.
Oh, border guy. Okay, here we go.
Yep. Yeah. Then there's the one after this. Says this one first. That one is the raw footage of it, and then the second one backs it up with a little documentation. So what we're talking about here, guys, in case you haven't seen this, is a news reporter was down on the southern border interviewing people as they illegally came across the border, and there's a guy there. I give you it's not hard to hear, but it's not easy to hear either. We'll give you after he talks, tell you what he said. And it is quite telling. That would be, see if you get the other one there, brother. I'm not sure if that one has the audio of him. It'd be the one the email that was titled "This One First," I believe. Okay. It was. Yeah, this one first. Yeah.
Okay, this one first.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this. Give me just a second.
Sure.
Okay, that's the right one, right?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
This is the gentleman there with the denim jacket on. I say gentleman very loosely here. The male. Although I guess I shouldn't assume that.
I'm getting my rear end kicked here. Give me 1 second.
It's all good. So this was a reporter talking to this group, and this gentleman makes some comments here. I'm guessing most of you have probably seen this or heard about it, but for anybody later, or in case anybody here hasn't seen this, because you're not going to see this on any mainstream thing.
No, you're not.
It's and this is something that we've seen a lot of military age males coming across the border from all over the world. Um,
Look at that. It's
Look at
infinity.
you.
I'm
Yes,
just getting my ass kicked here.
it's all good.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, take your time. So this is this guy came out and said the quiet part out loud is what happened.
Yeah.
And there's the way the reporter took it. I don't know if the right word is maybe a little naive, unaware. But it's, I don't know. I don't think it's the way I would have reacted to that. And we're seeing this down there. And again, going back to Ed Calderon stuff, there's a lot of people who don't like the United States finding their way into Mexico to get here and not have to jump through any hoops. And we also know that they can jump through the hoops and still get in the country eventually. You got there, brother?
Yeah, let's try this here.
The way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys.
You
Wow.
will see soon. Please, by the way, if you are smart enough.
Oof.
If you're smart enough, you'll know who I am. And his response was the entitlement. Wow, look at the entitlement on this guy. If you want to pull that other one up, we'll see who this guy is.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. Okay. Cancel that.
And I see your brother Jeff, he made a comment here. The right may not find the rioting so entertaining this go around.
No.
That is very true. So on the right-hand side there was a time I could read that without my glasses on. United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. I didn't know there was such a thing. On the right-hand side here, this guy is not a nice person.
Let's take a look.
You will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. If you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. If you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. If you will know who I am.
So he spent 12 years in prison for terrorism. If memory serves on that.
Oh, again, it goes
I know
back
he's in
to-
prison for terrorism. The 12 years is the part I'm not positive about. So here's this guy on the border. He's here.
And that's just, like we've talked about before. It's a basket of M&Ms. Some of them are good.
Yep.
Some of them aren't. And, if just 1% of the 7 million or what have you have come in under Biden's watch.
Yep.
And it's, again, like Governor Abbott pointed out, more than 33 additional states.
Yeah.
That if just 1% of them, we're looking at bad. And we know it's probably worse than that.
Even if we take that down, 1% of 7 million would be 70,000. Make it 0.1%. That's 7,000.
I know.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, take it down another decimal point, you still got 700.
Yeah.
When the numbers get that big, it doesn't take much of, yeah, exactly. So what do we got here, brother? This is taking us out.
If you were looking to hire someone to provide security for your family and you were presented with your own resume, would it be enough? Wow. I love that.
Yeah, I saw that one and it was like, ooh, there's a thought provoker for you. So that goes back to being a coin member, guys. Go do the assessment in the coin members area. Figure out where you're lacking and then spend some time on it. Great resource in the coin members area and the regular member area. If you need guidance on something, you got the training vault. If it's a question or a deficiency in your skill set that goes beyond that, ask. There's somebody in the group that knows.
Yeah, Michael Gentili says, is there anyone who believes that a curated group of malevolent people aren't here? They're definitely already here, and they're coming in more numbers because all it takes is a few to get a foothold. We do it already. I mean, if you look at how JSOC operates or any of our military, we send an advanced party, and they call it AFO, Advanced Forces Operations. We go in, we set up the infrastructure, we rent the car, we get the safe houses, and then we let the troops come in to do their thing, and then we retrograde. I think we could be seeing that here.
Yes, absolutely. This is, I mean, we can talk about the Iranians and their ties with Venezuela and how people come up through the tri-border area in South America, come up through Central America, Mexico. And then, of course, we can dig into the whole cluster of, how are these, who's funding these? Nobody knows who's funding the transportation for these folks to get up to the border.
Well, there might be, the United Nations might have a hand in this. And I don't know if you guys saw Ted Cruz pulled up an armband and showed it and now they're trying to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
See how that goes. There's another black swan event. It's only happened one other time in history. But he said, Secretary, do you know what this is? And he held up the armband. He's like, I have no idea what that is. So, well, you should, because they're laying all over the border, and everybody coming across the border has one. And different cartels will put these bands on their wrists. You owe me. Wow. And they're tracking these guys, where they are and who they are and what they owe. And if it's a guy, you might owe some work. And if it's a woman, guess what? Sex slavery. So again, it's like, guys, we need to stop this. And the fact that this administration wants to come in and cut damn wire is just absolutely crazy to me.
It is. The only logic it follows in my mind is they want to juice the numbers up, get it to the point where they push amnesty, especially if Biden wins this election, pushes amnesty, and then these folks will vote for Biden, Democrats, I should say, forever. And you can forget about ever having another Republican president. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the game that's being played.
Well, again, look at Executive Order number 9, unwind Trump's changes to the census. He wanted to make sure it's counted accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, get rid of that. So here you go. Ask yourself, have these policies made our border safer, kept your family safer, or made it worse? And then take action on those beliefs. Anything else, Mr. Will?
No, guys, thanks for hanging with us. Hour and 50 is a long show. We had a lot of stuff to catch up on and take care of here. There's the things we're into, that things are happening faster phase and across multi factors, right? We've got the economy, we got the stock market, we got the border, we got Europe, we've got everything's happening. And it seems to me to be happening faster and faster.
It is. And Don says, guys, this has been a great show, worth every minute. Thanks for all your work you do to put it together. Alan says, great show. Yeah. Thank you, Will, to all the work that you put in to put this out there. And just, we've got, guys, think about this. For the next year, these shows, we're going to try to keep them around an hour and a half.
Yeah. We're really for the most part trying to shoot for an hour, guys.
Yeah.
But it's tough to do each subject. It's due and keep the time down. So it really is tough. So thanks for hanging with us. It's
absolutely. Yeah. Guys and gals out there in Warrior Nation, Will and I love you dearly, and hope you would keep you and your family safe. And you can do that by checking out the American Warrior Society. I will do that randomized drawing, and we will get that book to someone who shared today's show. So thank you, guys, and Will, take us out.
The fight's coming. Be ready.